I'm not going to tell you about some procrastination stopping approach that I'll later blame you for failing to implement. Nor will I give you generic advice I'm certain will work because it worked for me. Will I share stuff that works for me? Yes. Will I share some stuff you might have heard before? Maybe. But here's something I understand that others you might turn to will likely not consider. There is no one-size-fits-all solution to overcoming procrastination. What works for one might not work for another. In fact, I've divided the advice I'll give based on a little something called the Four Tendencies. It's based on how one responds to expectations. We're going to use the awareness of our own inclinations to properly motivate ourselves. But more on that in a bit. Let's set a baseline that is true for everyone first. Things are not difficult to make. What is difficult is putting ourselves in a state of mind to make them. In trying to get better at time management, I learned the importance of mind management. Finding time doesn't matter as much as getting in the right state of mind to do the work. What people struggle with all the time is figuring out what they need to do to create that mood. In the case of writers, it's a matter of figuring out what they need to do to overcome the pain they associate with writing. The reason I say pain is because people are motivated by pain and pleasure. Pain pushes people away from tasks, while pleasure attracts them towards it. And between these two, pain is the stronger motivator. If you want to write and aren't, the reason why is simple. You consciously or unconsciously associate writing with some kind of pain. Your reaction to that statement can tell us a lot about you. If you disagree with it yet procrastinate anyway, you're someone who likes the actual process of writing but likely doesn't like the story they are working on. In that case, just re-examine what you're writing and if you should be at all. If you agree with that statement, you're a writer who likes having written but doesn't like writing. With you, what we're going to focus on is 1. Reducing the pain felt, and 2. Making not writing more painful than writing. And that's what brings us to the 4 tendencies. If you're someone who readily meets external and internal expectations, you're an upholder. These are the types who consistently meet expectations and thrive on routine. If you're someone who meets internal expectations but doesn't care about external ones, then you're a questioner, like me. Questioners seek clarity and purpose. They need to understand the why behind tasks and challenge all expectations until they align with their rationale. If you're someone who always tries to meet external expectations but fail to keep promises to yourself, you're an obliger. Obligers are committed to fulfilling other people's expectations to the point of prioritizing them over personal goals. Finally, if you're into neither internal nor external expectations, you're a rebel. Rebels value freedom and choice, resist being told what to do, and are driven by what aligns with their authentic self and desires. I'll include a test in the comments for those interested in taking it. Feel free to share your results as well. Now, here's what I've done. I've gone through all kinds of advice people give for productivity, and I've geared it towards each profile. Failure to follow through on these should hurt you, but feel free to tweak it as you see fit. Also, some advice might overlap, so it helps to listen to each of them. We're going to start with rebels because I'm going to say something I feel needs to be said. Don't set deadlines. Word count, stuff like that, you don't have to worry about it. In fact, you don't have to write at all. I'm not saying don't write. I'm telling you that you don't have to write. You have no obligations. Choose to write. Don't say, I will write. Instead, ask yourself, will I write today? You're free to choose to do whatever you please. For you, it's about finding what you're passionate about and framing it in a way that doesn't feel like an obligation. Another strategy for rebels can be to turn writing into a dare or challenge. Seizing opportunities can work well with you too. It's something you engage in on your own terms that can align with your personal goals and values, and it puts your contrarian streak to work for you. Go against the grain and prove someone wrong for doubting you. Assuming, of course, you can. I'm willing to bet you can't get that story done. Think I'm wrong? Prove it. Prove it, show me it, and come back here to rub it in my face. If you do want to aim for any habits, I recommend setting a small, medium, and large goal. This way, you can decide on the go which version of the habit you'll pursue on that day. For instance, maybe you have a goal of 500 words a day, but don't feel like doing that much. You can pick to do the smaller one of 200 words, Or maybe you hit 500 or having a good day and want to keep going. Go for it then, aim for 1,000. Do whatever feels best for you. And don't feel you need to outline or anything. You're the type I would encourage to just write. I hate this advice as a cure-all. Seriously, if you give just write as a solution to every writing issue, bring it in the comments, we can have a talk. But this mentality does work best with you rebels. You're pantsers at heart, so embrace it. Dive in and figure out stuff later. Just make sure what you make aligns with your values and passions. Last but not least, here's a quick fun fact about rebels. They're the smallest group out of the Four Tendencies. The largest group, meanwhile, are the Obligers, and that's why we're going to go to them next. For Obligers, we're going to use the fact you need that external accountability to your advantage. So, the plans I've designed for you are based around cognitive dissonance. First up, you're going to look for writing groups where you can share your progress. I have one on Discord if you're interested, link in the description, but use any group that you think can help. If you don't want to get involved in a group, having a writing buddy could help. Pair up with someone who can check in on your progress. Another option, you can do stuff like web fiction, where you need to hit constant demands to get things done. And even if you don't want to work with others, you can use the public to your advantage. Start a blog or a social media challenge where you commit to regular post updates or snippets. Do something that makes failure to write translate into you letting down others. That's what your plan needs to be based around. And, on the flip side, pleasure for you comes from recognition and appreciation. With that in mind, we're going to make the possibility of failure to write a little less likely. I want you to be careful about overcommitting or biting off too much to chew. I want you to use mini habits. Make your goal as small as you can get so you can have a quick win and sense of satisfaction, and keep going if you feel like it. Combine that with sharing progress with others, slowly build up your minimal amount if you feel you can, and you have something strong that should work for you. Also, when it comes to outlining or pantsing, I would recommend outlining for you due to your preference for structure and external expectations. That said, I recommend giving my video on top and bottom brains a watch and taking a test to see where you should lean. A blend might even be what's best for you. If you're still around at this point, you're likely a questioner or an upholder, which means we can dig into the real fun now. I trust upholders the most to see the video through to the end, so I'm going to tackle my fellow questioners next. Questioners, we're the type who need to Batman everything. We need prep time, research topics, techniques, genre, etc. That's why you should subscribe to channels like this. We're the type who needs a clear rationale for every choice, and I think it helps to build a system that is suited to our specific circumstances. With everything, make sure to get feedback and consider the results of things, so you can fine-tune your choices. With my fellow questioners, I'm far more concerned about analysis paralysis with you, so I'm going to give you 5 self-statements that get me through things. Here's the things we shouldn't think. I have to. I must finish. The project is so big and important. I must be perfect. And I don't have time to play. I have to create victimization that justifies procrastination. We need to make it more empowering. Thus, replace I have to with I choose to. Like with rebels, it's a matter of us choosing our lives and living authentically. I must finish places your mind on a completed product somewhere in the future without telling you where to start. This makes things feel overwhelming, almost impossible. So, instead, ask, where can I start? This gives you a clear focus on what you can be tackling now. The project is so big and important, makes things seem so large and overwhelming that it creates anxiety with it, which kills your motivation. So, instead, think, I can take one small step. Breaking things down into manageable steps, like with what I mentioned to Obligers, gives you something you can accomplish now and build from. We're applying the 1% rule. 1% of progress, plus daily application, plus persistence, plus time, equals success. I must be perfect. Increases the likelihood of you procrastinating to avoid the pain of failure and self-criticism. As someone who has steadily overcome his own perfectionism, I can say this with certainty. Compassion is better than self-criticism. Something is better than nothing. Especially since whatever the non-perfect thing is doesn't have to be the end of the line or what defines anything. Replace this statement with, I can be perfectly human. And if you don't believe that, I'm going to leave the link in the description to my very first video I made for this channel. I want you to compare it to the present and see where choosing to not be perfect can lead you. Finally, don't think, I don't have time to play, because that creates these feelings of resentment for your work. Chances are you're going to have periods of isolation due to the demands of writing. This thinking can lead to you feeling that it's an obligation that demands you miss out on other things people enjoy and bleed into those other statements. So, replace it with, I must take time to play. Don't treat yourself like a machine. Even if you were a machine, you'd still need maintenance. In fact, doing those other things is important to productivity. The second stage of creativity is incubation, when someone isn't working on a problem. And the final of the 7 mental states for creative work is recharge, rest, refuel. You not only have time for other things, you need it. So, altogether, I choose to start on one small step, knowing you have plenty of time for play. I'm a questioner, so I can say this with certainty. If you have understanding and efficiency, you've got this. Just gear your plans around grasping the reason for things and avoid taking too long. Spend more time producing instead of consuming. If you're creating more than you're consuming or criticizing, you're more likely to discover and solve difficulties that passive types will never even consider because they're never experiencing things. And that's what we're all about here, the experience. As for whether you should outline our plans, it depends. We can swing to either side depending on our rationale and the specific project's demands. I recommend taking that test I mentioned. I'll link the video at the end if you don't already have it. That was a lot. Alright, at last I can address upholders. I'm sorry for the wait. You're the second smallest group, but you are so reliable that I don't need to worry about you as much as I would, say, rebels and obligers. I'm going to assume you watched everything up until now and taken in so much. With you, we're going to be a bit more generic. Pain for you comes from breaking commitment. So set deadlines. Maybe you can set a target word count for each week or day. You're the type that stuff is best suited for. Also, create a daily routine, such as a specific time of day for writing. Consistency is your jam, so I'm confident you can do those things. But in case life does throw curveballs at you, use the small, medium, and large stuff I mentioned before so you can reduce the feelings of pain. Finally, while you're self-motivated, a writing group or buddy can provide additional structure, as can most of the advice I've already dished out to obligers and questioners, especially those 5 statements. Beyond that, you've got this. Of course, there is more productivity advice out there beyond this. If you can share your own tendencies and what tips have helped you out, I'd be grateful, as I'd love to further fine-tune all of this with the experiences of others. Plus, I think it would be nice for others to have that data too. And if you want to dig more into your own mind, here's that link to the video on if you should pans or outline.